right, welcome everyone. My name is Erin Boyd and I work at AARP Vermont based in Burlington, Vermont. Thank you so much for joining us today. Like I said, you can put into the chat where you're zooming in from, but please keep yourself on mute and your video can be on or off. First, I'm just going to talk a little bit about AARP and then we'll jump into today's class. AARP is the nation's largest nonprofit. Yes, it is a nonprofit. And it is a nonpartisan organization that's dedicated to empowering people to choose how they live as they age. The vision of AARP is to have a society in which all people live with dignity and purpose and can fulfill their goals and dreams. With a nationwide presence, including right here in Vermont or whatever state you're zooming in from, AARP works to strengthen communities and advocate for what matters most to older adults and their families. They focus on health and security, financial stability, and personal fulfillment. And here are some examples of how they do that. AARP provides education on new laws, consumer fraud and scams, and retirement planning. AARP advocates at both the federal and state levels on issues such as Social Security, Medicare, prescription drug prices, and the cost of housing, transportation, and utilities. One second, I'm just going to mute a couple folks. Excellent. All righty. And then AARP builds community through programs, events, and local partnerships like today's class. AARP works to make states more livable for all ages by supporting safe and walkable streets and age-friendly housing and transportation options. Additionally, through the AARP Foundation,
Oh, shit. Oh, shit. You're not on mute.
Oh, thank you. I think I'm trying to juggle muting other people and muted myself. Thank you. Okay, so tax aid, great program, might be wrapped up this year. Check your local state folks for more information on that. And then also there's the driver safety program, and that provides free classes to be safe on today's roads. To get more information and details about what I just shared and so much more, you can go to aarp.org, but I'll also put some links into the chat for you to explore. Today's virtual event is about building community learning and of course some fun. To find future event opportunities from AARP Vermont, both in person and virtually, you can check our events page. If you're not based in Vermont, you can find event opportunities in your area on the local aarp.org page. Additionally, if you're only interested in virtual events, you can explore AARP's Virtual Community Center. I'll put links to all these event resources into the chat shortly, as well as a link to our Mindful Movement Mondays, which we have 2 more over the next 2 weeks. And then lastly, AARP has thousands of volunteers nationwide who donate their time and talent in person or from home to improve the lives of older Americans and their families. A shout out to anyone on the call today who's a current or previous volunteer. We thank you so much for your time and commitment to supporting your communities and partnering with AARP. If you're interested in learning more about becoming an AARP volunteer, you can go to volunteers.aarp.org. Also put this link into the chat. Before I pass it over to Julia, I just want to go over some housekeeping items. So again, if you can keep yourself on mute, that would be wonderful. Video can be on or off, whatever you feel comfortable with. This event is being recorded and it will be shared via email in the next couple of days. Please always check your email spam box. Sometimes that's where it lands. If you have a question or a comment, please put it into the chat and we'll do our best to answer those today. We won't be able to get to all the questions, but we'll pick out some themes and definitely answer as many as we can. And then if you would benefit from closed captions, you can click the Show Captions button on the bottom bar of your Zoom screen, and then you can adjust the size and color for what works best for you. So again, questions or comments into the chat, video on or off, but please stay muted. And thank you for joining us, and I'll pass it over to Julia.
Hi, everybody. My name is Julia Fuller. I am a personal trainer in Burlington, Vermont, and I am going to be presenting to you about back pain and core stability today. I know that this is like a huge issue for so many people, and what we're going to go over today is, first of all, just how many different things that means, what that means for different people, Back pain is a pretty broad term just because we have so much space in our back. So we're going to go over learning about that and just talking about just the different types of back pain. And then we're going to go into some exercises that can help support that, support core stability, and just basically help manage discomfort. All right, so I'm just going to take a second and open up this slideshow here for you guys. Okay, so back pain and core stability, like I mentioned before, back pain is a pretty broad term. And so we're going to go into kind of what the different things for that are. But just introducing myself a little bit more. Like I said, I'm a personal trainer based in Burlington, Vermont. I have a bachelor's degree in biomedical science. I originally started in healthcare, and I basically ended up wanting to work more preventative. I was working with people to be able to kind of help them get to a point where you can just move and just live your life. I'm focused on the day-to-day person, the person that's just trying to keep up with their grandkids, be able to do the things they want to be able to do without pain, be able to walk and move comfortably without discomfort for as long as possible, and just be able to do the things that they really love. So I specialize in strength, biomechanics, and mobility. And so all of those little areas are going to be involved today in what we are talking about. If you have questions, I think Erin is putting in my information into the chat box. So please feel free to reach out to me, check out my website. Let me know if you have any questions regarding what we go over today, or if you were at last week or the next two, please don't hesitate to reach out. So if you are dealing with back pain, what do you do? So the first thing is go to your doctor, go to a medical professional, make sure that there's nothing really serious going on. A lot of the times it is something, especially if it's just kind of like creeped up over time and you're like, oh, my low back is bothering me, or my neck is bothering me, or whatever it may be. That is likely not necessarily going to be a huge like injury or something that has happened acutely. That being said, it's not necessarily the case. So always go see a medical professional, go see your doctor. They are going to make sure that you are going to the right person. There are a variety of different movement professionals and people that work with discomfort. So thinking about physical therapists, a chiropractor, a massage therapist, a personal trainer, there are so many different people to go to. There are others outside of that. So being able to talk to your doctor and understanding what the best person for you is really going to give you the right step to go forward. You don't want to just do something and just deal with the pain. The more you can manage it right up front, the better. So like I said, there are a lot of different movement professionals. They will tell you where you should be going. Once you start working with a professional, if you are dealing with the pain, you're going to need to develop a plan and routine for improvement. So that's going to mean daily stretches, daily exercises, things to do in order to manage that pain, maybe just standing up more throughout the day, things like that. And then you also want to make sure that you're tracking progress and roadblocks. The more you understand what you're dealing with in that moment and how things progress, the more you'll know where you're going and how you're moving forward. And that's going to help your healing process a lot, mentally and physically. So factors that may be impacting your back pain. There's, like I mentioned before, injury versus posture and strength. So if you have injured yourself, you have had an acute accident, you've had something that was a very specific moment that created pain, that created a problem, that's an injury. If you just had something like over time slowly start to creep up, that your low back is bothering your upper your back or your mid back is starting to bother you, that may be because of lack of strength in certain areas or postural alignment positioning, basically. So if you were here last week, you would have seen that we talked about how to hold yourself up. We're going to go over that very briefly today. And that's going to be something that can really help manage back pain. I've seen it a number of times where if people are not holding themselves upright, they're actually dealing with quite a bit of pain. So we'll go over that. Common weaknesses and challenges that you may be facing are things like what you're doing in day to day, how you're working. Are you doing repetitive movements, things like that, that you are feeling discomfort from, whether you're sitting at a desk, whether you throw a ball for your dog a lot and your shoulder is bothering you. Just starting to notice what are the things that you're doing frequently that are potentially impacting what you are dealing with in your pain. Breathing is also relevant to what we're talking about with back pain. We're going to go over that briefly in a little bit. And just general stiffness too. That kind of goes along with the posture and alignment and strength. If you aren't holding yourself upright, your body's going to get used to something else, and then it's going to start to become generally fairly stiff in certain areas. So as I mentioned before, injury versus alignment versus strength and stability. So alignment, strength, and stability are fairly similar in the way that they all work kind of together. An injury is going to be more unique in that it is a more exact moment that something happened rather than buildup of things over time. So if you're talking about postural and strength, doing overuse, like I said, repetitive movements, sitting for too long, not having the correct ergonomic setup, compensating for things. So if you aren't standing correctly, you're just going to start compensating. Or if you start trying to find the easiest way to do things, that's how your body's going to naturally do it. It's going to lead to compensations, which eventually will probably lead to pain. The amount of training that you do, so making sure that you are really trying to train your body to be able to hold yourself upright, and just learning how to do it appropriately is going to make a big difference. And then with the injury, traumatic, acute, overuse, but creates a more acute issue, tears, break, surgical rehab, something that is very, very immediate and you see exactly when it started. So chronic back tightness, this is not with an injury. This is something, like I said at the beginning, where it's like if you are letting it kind of creep up on you and you're starting to feel it like little by little. So a lot of people think about like low back pain. So when we're talking about low back, there's a couple of different areas that we can talk about. So if you're thinking about your hips and your hip girdle, right down in that area, a lot of the times people have pain in their SI joint. And so what that looks like if I stand up is it's going to be kind of right across this area. Sometimes they have pain right through here. If that's you, you'll know exactly what I mean. Sometimes that is more nerve pain. Sometimes it's pinching. Sometimes it's general tightness. There are a lot of different things that are going on in that area. So it's hard to tell exactly what it will be. So if you are somebody that's dealing with this, I really recommend that you go and see someone to address your specific concerns. If you have questions today, I'll do my best to answer them, but it's going to be hard for me to answer anything specifically related to a specific injury or discomfort because everybody's so different. If we're talking about a little higher up, which I would still consider to be the low back, which is going to be the space between my hip bone, the top of my hip, and my bottom rib. So this area through here will also get fairly tight. A lot of the times that happens from sitting too much, just from overdoing it. If you stand where you're sticking your butt out behind you, that's going to create some tightness in there. Sometimes if people are exercising and they're holding in this position where they're in this untucked position all the time, that's just going to create a general level of tightness all of the time. So that's just something to be aware of. And then the next section we're going to go to is thinking about the mid back. So the mid back is just above where I talked about. The rib cage positioning is what I've seen has been one of the most common things that has led to discomfort in the mid back. If you are like this a lot of the time, whether it's while you're sitting, while you're standing, no matter what you're doing, this area across the mid back can get really, really tired and sore, and it gets weaker. So learning to hold yourself upright will be really helpful as you're dealing with that. And then if we're talking about upper back between the shoulder blades, just like up, even on the shoulder blades, anywhere in this area or even into the neck, a lot of that has to do with positioning as well of your shoulder blades, of your rib cage, your head positioning. Again, anything in this rounded forward position is likely eventually going to cause pain and discomfort. And as I see here, is all of these are going to impact each other. So if you see, if I stand up here, if I think about untucking my pelvis. So I'm going to stick my butt out, which is the first one that I told you about. You can see one that my belly starts to stick out here. So I go from this to this, and then I have my shoulders round forward and my head comes forward. You may have seen somebody stand like this. You may stand like this yourself. These are just very common things that will lead to back pain. So just if you do stand like this, it's just something that you'll want to basically be educated on how to do it the best that you can. Common postural challenges, education. You don't know how to do it. You don't know what's the right standing up. Squeezing your shoulders back and down is only going to get you so far. Working your abs in specific ways is only going to get you so far. Understanding all of the little details behind it is going to help a lot. External factors, what you're doing at your job, what you're doing day to day. Mobility, how mobile are you? If you have stood or sat like this for a really long time, it's going to be hard to do this. It's going to be hard to stand up from there. So mobilizing your body is going to be really helpful. Strengthening your body to hold yourself in those positions that you've mobilized for. Any compensations that you're doing throughout your day. And if you are sitting a lot, the more you can stand, move, and walk around, the better. And then we're going to go into diaphragmatic breathing. We're going to practice it in a minute. But just going over what diaphragmatic breathing is that it is belly breathing. So we're going to, once we get to it, we are going to be expanding through our belly. Yeah, Erin, did you want to say something?
Yes, just really quick. Folks are having trouble seeing the screens and stuff like that. So a lot of stuff you have to adjust on your own screen. So you should see a presentation and you should see Julia. In the middle of the screen, there'll be a little bar. If you kind of like hover over with two little lines, you can drag that to the left or the right, and that's going to make one side of the screen larger or smaller. You also are going to want to make sure you're in the side-by-side speaker view, just in case that got changed, even though she is spotlighted. And then when she's doing the demonstration parts, they're really getting into those details, she's going to go fully out of the presentation and into the video. So we are going to change views. It's just we're trying to juggle presentation plus showing a little bit of the visual. So we'll get to those details in a moment. Yep, and you can close your chat. You can close all the side windows. I see black, 2 windows, but nothing. Okay. So she's spotlighted. So that should mean she's the largest window on your screen, tile on your screen. And then if that's not the case, go to the view in the upper right-hand corner and select the side-by-side speaker view. And then again, you're going to want to look at the screen. You should see a presentation on the left, video of Julia on the right. There'll be a little kind of bar that comes to, let's see, when you hover over it, it'll show up in gray, and you're going to drag that to the left or the right, and that's going to adjust the size of the screens. So I hope that was helpful. But again, once Julia gets into more of the demonstration, she is going to, go out of the presentation, and you'll be able to see her doing those much larger on your screen. And if you have a question or comment, please put that into the chat. All right, onward.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm almost done with this. So we will finish this up quickly and then we'll go on to the exercise portion. And then you should be able to, as long as you can see me, that should make it a little bit easier for you to see what's going on. So very briefly, just going into what diaphragmatic breathing is so that you kind of get an understanding of what we're going to be doing when we practice it. It's belly breathing. So you're going to be filling your belly with air. It's not breathing through your chest. You're not trying to expand through your chest. There might be a little bit of movement. We want really minimal movement and more movement in our belly. Another thing to consider is nasal breathing. A lot of the times breathing through our mouths, there's a variety of things that have to go with that, but that's going to encourage more of that chest breathing and more shallow breaths. So you're going to get more out of it through the diaphragmatic breathing. It's also going to expand through your core, which is going to help stretch your low back. And then it's also going to help activate your vagus nerve. I'm not really going to go too far into that, but if that is something that you know of, that is a very helpful thing for managing stress, anxiety. If you have any other like mental things that are going on that you are feeling not so great about, activating your vagus nerve can really help calm your body down. And then strength and stability. Being able to balance yourself, that is going to help a lot with back pain, because if you are balancing and you're finding that you can't balance, that's a clue that there is something that is not strong enough to hold you in that position, which is probably going to be relative to what you're doing when you're just standing. Building control, so knowing how to move your body, controlling through movements, making more fluent movements is really going to help because you're more in control. You're able to hold yourself in specific positions. And finally, as I mentioned earlier, mobility. If you are not mobile, it's pretty hard to hold yourself in specific positions. You're going to continue to be pulled out of those positions. So you're going to be working really, really hard. So learning how to do the correct things that will be really specific for you will be the best way to make sure that you are getting the most out of it and really managing your pain and feeling stronger throughout your core. And finally, if you don't use it, you lose it. So the more you can practice in doing these things, the more you can sit up tall, the more you can exercise. And I don't necessarily mean like super intense, like fitness classes or anything like that. I'm talking about moving, move your body, go for a walk, do certain exercises that you know you need to do in order to strengthen your body so that you can keep doing the things that you want to. If you want to pick up your grandkids, you need to be able to hold things. You need to pick up things. So strengthening your body to be able to do that without tweaking your back will be really, really important. Otherwise, say, for instance, you like to crochet or knit or something along those lines or garden. Being in this position all the time while you're doing all of this stuff, learning how to hold yourself up and mobilize and strengthen your body to go in the opposite will help from that not irritating you as much. Okay, so that is my presentation for this. So I'm going to stop this share and I'm going to have you guys ask any questions or have Erin address any questions that have come up during that.
Okay, yeah, so questions are coming into the chat. We're not going to have folks come off mute just because that's a little too hard to manage. So questions are coming into the chat. So we did have some good ones.
Awesome.
So someone asked about inversion tables and what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I think that they can be helpful. I mean, I think it really kind of depends on what you're dealing with. If you're dealing with a lot of compression in your back because of whatever it may be, it can definitely be helpful. I would say you don't want to like overdo it, but doing it effectively or doing it in a way that is works for you can definitely be effective. I would say trying to talk with a physical therapist or a chiropractor to make sure that they are kind of aware of what you're doing so that you can make sure that you're doing it correctly and you're not just like putting yourself up and just kind of like waiting to see what happens. The more you have an understanding of what you're trying to do with the inversion table, the better results you'll have with it.
Great. So then another question was about they don't have any injuries or haven't had surgery, but they have a lot of tightness and heaviness where their spine meets their pelvis. And it's only when they're walking. Sitting is not a problem. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, so there's a variety of things that can be happening there. That's a very common place to have a lot of tightness and discomfort. With that, again, I really do recommend going to either a doctor or a physical therapist to have them kind of assess you to see if there's anything more going on. But a lot of the time, stretching that area specifically and strengthening the front, like strengthening your abdominal region will be really helpful. Mobilizing through your low back and strengthening your glutes will be really helpful. We're actually going to go into some specific things that will be beneficial for that in the exercise portion. But if you are having this, I have worked with someone actually very recently who has what you're talking about, lots of tightness in that low back area, but sitting is fine. Being a lot of times there's some stuff that gets really compressed in there and you have to kind of work that out a little bit. So I would say really either if this stuff feels good today, if you can do this, then great, keep working on that stuff. If it doesn't and it irritates you more or it just isn't helping, definitely go see a doctor or physical therapist.
Great. So you kind of just answered this, but someone's just asking, what do you mean by movement specialists?
Yeah, so physical therapist, chiropractor, personal trainer, it depends on what you're dealing with. So I do work with people that have back pain quite a bit, but it's very like it's not injury based back pain. So if you're talking about just like chronic discomfort, a personal trainer might be a good person to go see. But those are kind of the major ones. A physical therapist or a chiropractor would be a really good people to go to is the first step. But before that, if you're just not sure what's going on, go to your doctor and they will tell you who to go see.
Great. So another one is, can back problems cause hip pain or problems?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. The back, the hips, and your hamstrings, the back of your thighs are very connected. Now, everything is connected we all know that we're all in one body, but more so than you can possibly imagine are things connected and working together and feeding off of each other. So very, very commonly, if I see tight hamstrings or tight hips, I will ask about how their back is, because those things pull on each other a lot. And if one thing is weak or one thing is tight, it's going to create pain in another spot. It's much more common for something that is a pain point, unless it's been an injury, to have come from something else. So it's less likely that the actual pain point is the true problem.
Great, thank you. Let's see here. Let's try to maybe two more. How do you manage inflammation of the nerves and arthritic pain? Is the fascia also involved?
Oh yeah, that's definitely involved. So you have to be very careful when it has to do with nerve pain. Basically, when we're doing any exercise, you should not have any pain, period. Discomfort is fine, like where you're feeling challenged and you're like, wow, this is really, really hard. I feel like I'm shaking or my muscles are working. That's totally fine. That's what we want. That's great. We have to challenge ourselves to have success, but pain, absolutely not. So if you are dealing with nerve pain day to day and things like that, that you can do specific exercises that will help manage that, as long as they don't trigger the nerve pain. So you really want to make sure that you're not activating that nerve pain, but thinking about if you have a tight muscle. I do a lot of work with foam rolling and myofascial release. And that can help with the nerve pain and tightness. But you don't want to be rolling directly on the nerve or where the pain is. It's just learning how to release some of the muscles that the nerves are kind of getting triggered by, that are creating pain or being pinched in one way or another.
Good, great. And I just wanted to know, we're getting a lot of great questions. Unfortunately, we won't be able to get to all of them. And some of them are really specific or aren't really related to what we're going to talk about today. So, if I'm letting you know in the chat, we just can't answer them all, and do my best to read through and kind of highlight some that might be applicable to many, many people. So here's a good one, I think. When to use dry heat, like a heating pad, or moist heat or ice?
Oh, interesting. Yeah. So basically, when it comes to heat or ice, there's a variety of different things. I think really ultimately the best thing is like what helps you feel good, but I do recommend trying both options. Some people do better with heat, some people do better with ice, some people do better with a combination. I tend to find that unless something's like visibly swollen, um, that I don't really use ice very frequently, because I don't want to really numb the area, unless I'm not going to be doing anything with it. So if I am going to be just like going to sleep, then maybe I would ice it to kind of calm it down. The other problem with that though too is it can kind of slow down the healing process a little bit. So if you have like an injury or something along those lines, or you just sprained something or whatever, ice is useful if you absolutely need it. If you're like, I'm in so much pain and I need to calm this down, ice would be a good thing to do. But other than that, you kind of want the body to do its job healing. Heat can help with that healing process. So because it's bringing more blood flow to that area, it's going to help move things along a little bit better. But that being said, it will also swell that area. So if you're dealing with swelling, heat isn't necessarily going to be the best thing in terms of pain management. But ice will help with the pain, but won't necessarily help with actually healing things and making things better. In terms of dry versus wet, I'm not 100% positive on what I would consider with that. I typically just do dry for the most part. And then I guess if I'm talking about like ice, I will like dip sometimes in like cold water. And that is beneficial, but more for full body inflammation than a specific spot.
Awesome. And then you kind of already talked about this, but in terms of other tools you might use, so foam rollers, balls, pinky balls, I don't know if that's a specific brand, but any other tools you use to manage pain, help you with stretching, etc.
Yeah, foam rollers, balls. I have all sorts of different types of balls that I use. So I have softballs for specific things, lacrosse balls, tennis balls. I'll use tennis balls in like a sock. And so those are a few different things that I really like to manage pain. I think that foam rolling and myofascial relief is one of the best ways to manage pain in a more immediate way, but you just have to know how to do it. Just rolling around on something isn't necessarily going to give you the results that you're looking for. Understanding how to move and how to hold in specific spots and to work the correct areas are going to be really helpful. So foam rolling, there are different tools that you can use with that. So there's, I'm drawing a blank on what it's called right now, but there's a stick basically that you can use that has like a hook, and then you could put it there and you could hold it here. And so that can get into different areas. But I tend to find that those are the best in just correct strengthening and stretching exercises, and then just learning how to mobilize your body so it moves a little smoother is really going to be kind of the way that I would direct people.
Awesome. So I think we're good for now. I'm going to also put into the chat some great resources that Julia shared, links to YouTube links. So those will provide you with some other kind of things you can follow up and check out. So onward.
Yes, awesome. So in the videos, in the links that Erin's going to be providing is going to be most of the exercises that we're going to be doing today. Not all of them. I'm going to show you a couple modifications, show you a few advances. Not all of those are going to be on there. There's going to be a couple that we're going to skip through, but for the most part, all of the exercises are going to be on there. So either make sure that you save the recording when she sends it out to you via email, or go to those links now, whatever works best for you. That will be a way for you to go over some of the stuff that we did today. And then other than that, like I mentioned earlier, is that feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. My email and my website and all of that will be there as well. Okay, so I am going to move this a little bit, and we are going to move into the exercise portion. So I'm going to have you guys come down to the ground here, and we're going to come into a tabletop position. Erin, just let me know if at any point you can't see me or anything along those lines. So we're going to start in a cat-cow position, or we're going to be moving into that. So tabletop. If at any point anything hurts, please stop. Don't go through it. I don't want you to try to keep working through it. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. So make sure what we're doing feels good today. Maybe there's a little bit of a challenge. That's okay. But you're not creating pain. You're not irritating anything. If anything, you're helping it feel better. You're feeling a little bit more of a release. Things are moving a little bit better. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and tuck our pelvis. So I'm going to start by rounding through my tailbone and through my very low back. And then I'm going to round through my more mid to low back, and then my mid back, my upper back, and then I'm going to tuck my chin to my chest, and I'm going to round away. Then I'm going to untuck my pelvis, and I'm going to drop my belly down towards the ground. Then I'm going to drop my bottom rib in the front down towards the ground. Then I'm going to squeeze my shoulder blades down my back and begin to bring my chest forward, push the ground away, and look forward. And then again, I'm going to tuck my pelvis, round through the low back, to the mid back, upper back, tucking my chin to my chest, and rounding away. And then untucking again, dropping through the low belly, through the bottom rib, squeeze shoulders down your back, chest forward, look forward. This time we're going to come and tuck, round through that low back. Imagine there is a perforated line across your mat between your hands and your knees. And as you round into this cow or cat position here, I want you to imagine you're trying to tear that perforated line. You're trying to tear the mat in half. So you're reaching your hands forward. They're not actually going to go anywhere, but you're kind of putting pressure forward and your knees are pressing back. So you're creating this tearing sensation across the mat. So you're rounding and you're pushing in both directions. And then you're going to arch. So drop your belly, squeeze your shoulders down your back. And then think about pulling your hands and your knees towards each other, activating your back some more. If that does not feel good, do not do that. Just maybe stay in this position and then we'll come back to that neutral. Very nice. So that's cat-cow. Next, we're gonna do spinal rotation. So I'm gonna take my hands to my shoulders.
So
Sure.
sorry, quick thing. Someone just asked, for those who can't bend their knee, how should they do this or should they not do this?
Yeah, so basically if you can't bend into your knees, you can sit down and then you can think about like just rounding and arching and rounding and arching. And you can do this on a ball too. If you have like a yoga ball, you can do one of those. So you can kind of just do this and back. Okay. You can also just do it standing too, if you want to kind of just do rounded and then coming up and opening, if that feels okay. All right, so if you can't kneel, I'm also going to have you sit on this chair for this as well. If you can, we're going to come into a kneeling position, either here or up here, if that feels okay to you. Doesn't matter, whatever works is fine. So I'm going to come down to this kneeling position. Wherever you are is fine. I'm going to bring my hands to my shoulders, my chin to my chest. I'm going to try to keep my hips even on my heels. I'm going to round forward through my back. Now be careful, no pinching here. Make sure there's no pain. Move slowly. I'm going to twist my chest to the right. And then I'm going to come back. Keep holding that twist to the right. And then I'm going to come up towards the sky, twist to the left, and then come down, holding that twist to the left to meet back in that starting spot. And then I'm going to reverse it. So I'm going to twist to the left, lean back while I hold that twist. I'm going to twist up towards the sky and over to the right, come down towards the front, and then back into the center. And then just kind of settle there for a moment. So again, if you had any pinching in that, you don't want that. Make sure you're not arching into your back where you're having pain. You're trying to keep your feet, your hips even on your feet as best as you can. The next thing we're going to do is come down onto our stomachs. If you can't do this on your stomach, I would say what you're going to try to do is just focus on lifting your rib cage without untucking your pelvis. So with this, you don't want to do this to lift the rib cage. So you can see my low back is really the flexing point. I want to quiet that down. So I want to keep that long. And I'm trying to lift my rib cage up. That's what you're going to do if you cannot lie down on your stomach here. If you can, you're going to come down to your stomach and you're going to bring your hands under your shoulders. So I want you to think about lifting your hands up here. If you need to, you could put your head on the ground, whatever you need to, your chin, whatever feels best here. So you're going to have your hands on the ground and then just kind of lift them up so that they're not even touching. Then I want you to put your fingertips on the ground so the palms stay up. And then I want you to think about drag your fingertips back. As you do that, squeeze your shoulder blades together and peel your chest up. So you're kind of looking forward. You're not like cranking your head forward, but you're looking forward gently. And then you're going to relax back down. Then we're going to do that again. So pull in and up at your belly button, thinking about keeping your pelvis tucked, which we'll go over in a moment. And then you're going to think about squeeze the shoulder blades together as you peel your fingers back and your chest up. And then this time lift those hands up so you can really feel that your upper mid back is doing the work. And then come back down. And then we're going to do one more here. Think about squeezing the fingertips back, nice and light, not putting any pressure onto the ground. Squeeze your shoulder blades back and then lift the fingers up. Very good. All right, coming into a child's pose. This is either going to be on the ground here, keeping your hips towards your heels, sitting your hips back down, bring your head down to the ground, your hands forward. If that is not accessible to you, you're going to still stay in your seat and you're just going to round forward, thinking about pushing into the low back. You're rounding so that you're really getting a stretch through here into this low back area and then working your way into the upper back, but really focus on through here. If you are in that child's pose, you're going to think about pushing air into your low back. So as I'm here, I'm going to push air into this area. So I'm going to take a deep breath and breathe out. As I take a deep breath in, I'm going to try to imagine the air going to that spot. So I'm going to think about breathing in, fill up that low back area, and then breathe out and let that relax. Do that a few more times. Just keep breathing into your low back, trying to feel space there. If you're struggling to feel that space, again, these are things that would be really helpful to go see someone that can teach you how to do this specifically. It's really helpful to have somebody be there to touch you, to make sure that they know that you're doing it correctly. They can cue you based on what you're doing and what you're seeing and struggling with. So if at any point, anything that I say just doesn't make sense or you can't quite figure out how to do it, definitely a good idea to go see someone, even if it's just for one session, to get an idea of how to do these things. Okay, so moving on from there. Yeah,
Sorry, quick questions on that one.
sure.
Can you do those on a bed instead of the floor?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, great.
I would say pretty much everything that we're going to do, you can do on a bed. The only challenge with the bed is it's not very stable. So either it's going to make things hard in certain ways, or it's not going to feel great in certain things. So you kind of want to use your best judgment. Maybe for some of the balancing things, I wouldn't suggest doing it on the bed, but for this, I think it should be fine. I know it should be fine for this. So.
Okay. And then just one more quick, someone just wondering about if the forward folds are okay with for someone who has spinal osteoporosis.
Yes, that should be fine. You want to make sure that you're nice and controlled when you're standing up. You don't want to just like flail yourself around, but be in control. With arthritis and you said arthritis? Is that what you said, Erin? Or osteoporosis?
Osteoporosis, yeah.
Osteoporosis, yes. So with osteoporosis, you also want to think about strengthening your spine. So doing certain things where you are putting kind of a load onto your spine, gently, nothing that's crazy, will help build that up as well. Okay, so next thing we're going to work on is thinking about bracing versus pulling in. Okay, so wherever you are, I want you to lie on your back here. So you could be on your bed, you could be on the ground, you can be wherever, it doesn't matter. But you're going to be lying on your back. And I want you to think about taking a few deep breaths in and relaxing them. And just in and relax. Just do a few more. Noticing where that breath is filling up. Is it filling in your chest? Is it filling in your belly? Trying to think about filling the air into your belly. If you can't figure this out, if you have something like CPOD or other lung challenges, you might not be able to figure this out right now, and that's okay. Again, go see someone that can help you figure out how to do that. There are a lot of different techniques to learn it. So think about trying to fill your belly as you pull the air in, and then compress your belly as you push the air out. So you're using your abdomen to kind of pull air in and push air out. This is your diaphragmatic breathing. So as you're doing this, and you take your next breath in, you fill the belly, I want you to think about pulling in and up of your belly button to push the air out. So you fill it, pull in, air pushes out. So feel that pull in of your belly button. Feel how you depress your belly away from the sky. You're pulling it into the ground. And then keep going, breathing in, filling up, pushing out using your belly. Now come to a more relaxed breathing. And I want you to think, now that you're kind of in tune with your abdominal muscles a little bit more, I want you to imagine there's a little fish hook right behind your belly button. And it's pulling in and up, just like a tiny little bit. We're just trying to do like a little in and up, not like a huge pull in like what you just did, a very small percentage of that. And I want you to imagine the string is at the top of your head. So imagine you're pulling this string and it's helping you pull that little in and up behind your belly button. Now that in and up, you can feel all the way up through your torso. That's going to help you hold upright. That's going to help stabilize through your core a little bit more. Okay, so that is pulling in. That's going to be really important. That's going to be something I'm going to mention as we go. Now I want you to imagine somebody's going to come and smack you in the belly. Okay, you tighten up, right? That's bracing. So they're two separate things. They're both core engagement. Both are important. But when I say we're going to pull in and up at the belly button, it's the first one, not the second one. That's going to be really beneficial in maintaining core strength and tension day to day and throughout the day, rather than just to lift things up. Okay? Very good. So now continuing to stay on your back, you're going to bend your knees, put your feet on the floor or your bed, whatever, it doesn't necessarily matter here. You're going to lie on your back and you're going to think about tucking and untucking your pelvis. So what that means is I'm going to think about kind of pulling my low back away from the ground and pushing my tailbone into the ground. And so my low back is arching. Then I'm going to think about tucking my pelvis or tucking my tailbone, so I'm pushing my low back into the ground. When I do that, you should feel your belly button pulling in and up. You should feel a little tuck through there. You should feel as though the front of your, or the top of your hip bones are crunching towards the bottom of your rib cage. And then you're going to go ahead and untuck and tuck and just back and forth from there. This is a huge thing that has to do with back pain. So if you don't know how to tuck your pelvis and you're struggling to do this, especially if, like we were talking about, that really low back just above the hip bone, if this is hard for you to do this, then that's a clue that there's something else going on that you need to address past just learning how to tuck your pelvis and engage your core. Okay, so from there, we're gonna keep the feet down. I want you to focus on your hip bone staying even. So we've got our sacrum, which is basically like a triangle shape at the base of our spines, right between our hip bones here. If you kind of go side to side, you should feel the sides of the triangle and the top is like this. So the bottom of the triangle is here, and then the edges are like here. And so I want to think about keeping that even, keeping my sit bones even, and I'm going to drop my right knee in towards the center without moving my hips. So I should feel a stretch in my hip socket. And then I'm going to come back up and then go to the other side. Drop the left knee in without moving my hips. Come back up, right knee in, back up, left knee in, back up, back and forth through there. Now we're going to again keep the hips stable, bring right knee out to the side, back in, left knee out to the side, back in. 2 more of each of those, right knee out, left knee out, right, and left. Very good. We can come up from there. And so next what you're going to do is either you can stay on the ground for this. And actually, let's do that. Let's stay on the ground for this next one. So you're going to lie on your back still. You're going to bring your hands up so your elbows are in towards your side. You're going to pin your shoulder blades underneath you. And then I want you to think about keeping your pelvis tucked. So your low back should be long against the ground. There shouldn't be a lot of space there, or really any space. And then I want you to think about squeezing your shoulder blades together to bring your hands out to the side and come back up. And then out and up. You should feel engagement in your shoulder blades, opening in your chest, activation in your abs or your core as you bring your hands further out. And just do a couple more like that. Good. Then we're gonna bring our elbows out to the side and then hands up to the sky. And then I'm gonna think about bringing my hands up towards my head and then back up. And then down and up. Again, squeezing the shoulder blades together. As I do this, keeping my pelvis tucked. This is just a good way to stay more upright and strengthen the upper back. Very good. Okay, so we're gonna stand up next. And so we're gonna do a quick little standing alignment here. So I went over this last week if you were here. If not, that's totally okay. I want you to think about imagining you have medicine caps under your feet. And when I'm saying that, you think about pushing down and twisting. However, we don't have medicine caps. So they're not actually going to twist. They're not going to go anywhere. It's putting pressure down and creating that twisting sensation. We're trying to create torque here. So I'm going to think about my feet being on those medicine caps. They're going to rotate. So I'm keeping my big toes down. I'm kind of thinking like I'm more on the outside edges of my feet. My arches are lifting a little bit more. As I do that, maybe you notice your knees are in or they're irritating you. Think about bend your knees, bring them out a little bit, then try to straighten up. You might feel your outer hips engage here. That's good. We want that. I want you to think as though your glutes are mostly quiet here. So you're not squeezing your butt to bring your hips forward. Thinking about that tucking of the pelvis. So you're bringing the front of the hip bone up towards the ribs. You're pulling in through there. Then you're thinking about doing that baby cobra that we talked about, or that arching of the upper back. So you're lifting up and back, and then you're bringing your head back. So you should feel like you're in a really strong, tall position here. Should feel pretty good. If it doesn't, this is again something maybe you want to get checked out for in terms of how to hold yourself, learning what makes sense and what works for you. There are a lot of little intricacies in there. So very good. So we're going to move on to a little bit more active strengthening. We're going to do this for just a few minutes, and then we are going to go over any questions. So I'm going to have you lie on your backs again. Again, you can do this on the bed, doesn't matter. And then you're going to put your feet on the ground, knees bent. I want you to think about tucking your pelvis. So you pull it in up, you feel activation in your core, you feel that low back kind of pushing into the ground. I want you to squeeze your glutes, squeeze your butt, push through your feet and lift your hips up. Don't lose that pelvic tuck. If you can push up as high as possible, you're lifting your hips way higher than I am, you are losing that pelvic tuck. So coming back down, keeping that tuck, squeeze the glutes and lift. And back again. So it's all about control. You get to a certain spot where your stomach stops you from going any further. And back down. Let's do 3 more here. Squeeze the glutes to lift. And back. Keeping the pelvis tucked, squeeze the glutes. And back down. 1 more. Tuck, squeeze, lift, and back down. Very nice. Next, we're going to go into something called bird dog. So an opposite arm leg extension. So variations on this, you can either go out, crunch in, straight back out again, and crunch in, or you can come out, set down, come out, set down. So whatever works best for you is fine. We're going to go ahead. We're going to go for 6 on each side. I do recommend going for more than this, but just for time's sake, I'm going to show you guys this. So we're just going to go for 6 on each side. So I'm going to think right arm straight out in front of me. I'm going to squeeze my right shoulder blade back. Then I'm going to think about pulling in and up through my belly button and bringing my leg back behind me. Then I'm going to think about crunching knee in towards elbow, or just setting the knee and the hand down and then going straight back out again. I am not trying to lift up like this. I'm trying to keep a neutral back as I go out. Come back in. I do a little round there, but as I come back out, I don't want to do that. Here, and crunch. And crunch. 2 more. Excellent. And then we'll switch over to the other side. So reach and crunch, reach and crunch. Very good. Keep breathing. Maybe you just set your hand and your knee down. 3 more. Last one. Excellent. Nice job. So pelvic stability is super important when we're talking about core strength. I'm going to show you guys one more, and then we're going to go over any questions that you may have. So there's a couple of variations I'm going to show you for this. The most challenging one I'm going to show you first, and then I'm going to show you modifications. So I'm going to start by lying on my side. I'm going to extend my bottom leg out, and my top foot, I'm putting in my bottom knee. So my right leg is extended. My left foot is on top of my right knee. I'm just propping myself up here. I'm going to really make sure that I don't tilt as I do this move. The bottom leg extended is going to make that hard. And I'm going to think about lifting the knee up, squeezing this upper hip area, which is active, keeping that active as I lower back down. Squeeze it to lift, and back, and lift, and back. Very good. If that doesn't feel good, you can keep going there if it does. If not, you can bend both knees, set your feet on top of each other so they're in line with your upper body. So I'm not forward, I'm not too far back, I'm right in line. And then I'm going to do the same thing, but the bottom knee is bent, which is keeping me a little bit more stable. So that's another option. If that feels good, great. If you were doing the first option, go ahead and switch over to the other side. If neither of those feel good, you can come into a seated position, and you can do both at the same time. Again, make sure you're activating this spot. It's not about just pushing your knees out. It's about how you activate to pull your knees out. This muscle works, it pulls your knees out. That's going to help stabilize your pelvis, which is going to help stabilize your back. It's going to help manage your back pain. Okay, so there are some other videos in the links that I sent you. I was hoping to get through some more, but didn't, and that's okay. But you can also look through those and go through them if it would feel good to you. And like I said, please reach out if you have any questions. But Erin, if there are any questions, we can go over them now.
Yes. So folks are just wondering, how often should you do these exercises, and how many reps, how many days a week?
Yeah. So basically you could do the ones that I've shown you today and the ones that are on the videos, you could do those as often as you possibly want. It's more about intensity that matters rather than anything. So if you're giving it like 100% intensity, I wouldn't do it more than like once or twice a week. If you're just doing it and you're just really focused, you're controlled, but it's not feeling like super, super intense, you're just being smart about it, you could do that very, very frequently. I typically go with a set of 12, but it doesn't necessarily need to be that. You can do 10, you can do 8, you can do 15 or 20, whatever feels good. Basically, you want to feel like you're challenging yourself. So even if that means doing more reps or going slower or adding a weight or something along those lines, that's what you're looking for. But yeah, the more consistent with it, the better.
Awesome. Thank you. Then we had a little more, couple more specific ones. So, any exercises that are good for scoliosis?
Yes. So scoliosis, I do definitely recommend going to see somebody because there are obviously more like differences in your back than there are in somebody that doesn't have scoliosis. There's nothing wrong with you. It doesn't mean that you can't do these things. It just means that you want to have a little bit more specific instruction. I would say all of the typical stuff should work fine for you as long as you're not having pain. Other than that, if you're trying to kind of manage any discomfort or challenges from scoliosis, again, going to see someone to make sure that they can kind of give you specific instructions, because scoliosis can be in like so many different directions and positions and rotations and all of that. So it's hard to give a very specific answer.
Thank you. And then final question, any suggestions for lower back sciatica?
Yeah, honestly, all of this stuff that we went over will long-term help with that. Foam rolling, myofascial release, if you do it in the right spots, not directly on the nerve pain or discomfort, that can definitely help with it. Or like just even going to get a massage, like that type of, if you don't know how to do myofascial release, a massage might be helpful. And then just doing the exercises that we went over and some of the other exercises that are on the videos, like the hip raises that we did, that's really going to help keep your pelvis in the correct alignment, which is going to help prevent that sciatica. Because sometimes it's like, if basically, if this is the SI joint, sometimes it can move around smoothly a little bit, but then sometimes it can get stuck like this. And then that can create pain. So if we have mobility in the SI and in the pelvis, as well as stability there to hold it correctly, that's really going to be what you're looking for. So some of those exercises will be helpful.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. And thank you everyone for joining us. We'll share out the recording, which will include the chat text. And then I'll also share out in the email all the links to videos that Julia shared with me, some that I got into the chat, some that I didn't. So you can explore all of those. And then you can join us at our next class, or next two if you're interested. They're on Mondays for the rest of April, same time, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard, and on different topics. So you can check out the link I put into the chat. That will also be available with the recording that you'll receive later today. And always check your spam box. Sometimes that's where it lands. But thank you so much for joining us, and have a great rest of your day. Take care.